Hey guys, what's going on? James here, and this is the day after the Tampa Bay Buccaneers' first preseason game versus the Cincinnati Bengals. The Buccaneers had a roster of 90 players going into that game, and coming away, they had to whittle that roster down to 85 players by August 17th, and they've already started that process by waiving 3 players, those players being number 1, Daquan Hampton, the tight end, number 2, Josh Pearson, the wide receiver, and then number 3 being Cameron KINLEY, the cornerback. And we are going to be briefly talking about that in today's video. If you are new, go ahead and subscribe, hit the like button if you do enjoy these videos, and leave your thoughts down in the comments section down below. So I'm going to talk about each of these guys, kind of what their journey had been so far up to this point with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and if they potentially have a spot on the practice squad or with another team elsewhere. So let's start with Daquan Hampton. He was really brought in pretty late on in the process. The Buccaneers had suffered some injuries at the tight end position. Rob Gronkowski, he was still doing all right, but you never want to really put him out there too much if you don't have to. Cameron Brate was still coming back from injuries. He was on the PUP list, and O.J. Howard was coming back from an injury as well. So they were pretty thin. They had Tanner Hudson, they had Cody McElroy, they have Darrell Adams. All 3 of those guys are still on this roster, by the way, but Daquan Hampton was brought in. He did some good things, I think, in camp, but this waiving, this cut, if you will, does make a good amount of sense. There are just too many guys competing for one roster spot right now, one 4th tight end spot, if they even decide to keep 4 tight ends. And overall, Daquan Hampton, he just was in a really tough situation, a big uphill climb, if you will. Will he have a spot on the practice squad? That I'm not too sure of. I think that it would probably go to one of the other tight ends that is still currently on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers roster, but I could see him getting an opportunity with another team somewhere down the line. Josh Pearson, we actually talked about him in yesterday's video. He had missed a couple of opportunities in the first preseason game on a couple of passes from Kyle Trask, and overall, I think that if you had to give a wide receiver who might not have had the best camp, it probably would have been Josh Pearson. That isn't to say that he had a bad camp. He still did, again, some good things. I think he was having a good camp overall. But we've talked about this so many stinking times, guys. There are so many good wide receivers from top to bottom on this Buccaneers roster right now that a lot of guys in that group are facing uphill climbs. Even guys like Jaydon Mickens, who were on the roster fully last year. Those types of guys are facing uphill climbs. So for Josh Pearson, it was just a really tough situation to be in. He is somebody who I could potentially see be brought back on the practice squad potentially, and if not, I fully expect him to be on another team's practice squad, or maybe a 6th wide receiver on an active roster somewhere. But I think at the very least, Josh Pearson will end up on a practice squad, be it the Tampa Bay Buccaneers practice squad or another team's in the NFL. And then finally, Cameron KINLEY. I know this one's going to sting for a lot of people. Cameron KINLEY, he had a great story. He was coming in from Navy. He looked pretty decent in the rookie minicamp. It seemed like he had a lot of momentum in his favor. And then the Navy had said, look, man, you can't go to the NFL. You have some obligations here. He was very upset about the situation, understandably so, in my opinion. A lot of people, raised a quite amount of support for Cameron KINLEY, and the decision was reversed. Cameron KINLEY was allowed to come into the NFL and pursue his dream of making it on a 53-man roster and being a player in the NFL. But a great story alone does not get you a roster spot. You have to come in and you have to do the work. And I believe Cameron KINLEY knows that. Of course he does. He's not going to rest on his laurels. He's not going to just let his story speak for itself and just assume that'll give him a roster spot. Absolutely not. He came in here and he really did try his hardest, but it just wasn't working. I've talked about him multiple times in training camp. He really did struggle in practices. I don't know if that's because there was a little bit of time in between the start of training camp and him actually being allowed to come into training camp by the Navy. I'm not sure if that was a big contributing factor to that. It could have been. Who knows? But we saw it in the preseason game as well. Cameron KINLEY, he just struggled in coverage. We've seen it in training camp. We've seen it in preseason game action now, and it just wasn't going to work out. He is a guy who you may see on the Buccaneers practice squad, possibly. You know, it just depends on the circumstances and whatnot. I know Bruce Arians gave him a good amount of praise early on in the training camp process, but as time went on, it just seemed like KINLEY was falling behind some of the other guys battling for that fifth cornerback job. But as I said, maybe he will end up on the Buccaneers practice squad. I could definitely see that as a possibility. So, what do you think, guys, of these three players getting cut? Give me your thoughts down in the comments section down below. Are any of these surprising? What are your thoughts on these three players? There should be a couple more players that will get cut here by August 17th. The Buccaneers have to have 85 players on their roster from the 90. So they're already down 3. They need to get rid of 2 more guys. We will keep track and see who those players will be. But it's never fun to see people lose their jobs, and I wish nothing but the best for all 3 of these guys and whatever opportunities present themselves in the future. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you all enjoyed, and I will see you all in the next video or the next live stream. But until then, and as always, guys, goodbye for now, and go Bucs.